What's up, Bucs Squad? I'm your host, Jaron. I'm going to tell you why this free agency period has just been meh.
Marcus Ray, I'm going to tell you what I think about Maxx Crosby and what the Bucs need to give up to get him.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'll tell you what still needs to be done on the Bucs free agent checklist.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Bucs Squad? Like I said, I'm your host, Jaron. We've got a packed show for you today. Is Maxx Crosby back in play? Since we last talked on Monday, some crazy things have happened there. We'll talk about his side, but also around the NFL, we'll talk about the Trey Hendrickson side of all of that. Then the Bucs have made a couple moves in free agency today. Nothing spectacular, but we'll break that down. Then Lavonte David, is he staying? Is he going? I mean, we haven't officially heard anything, but what is it looking like? And then, like I said, we'll go around the NFL, and mainly we'll talk about the Trey Hendrickson move to the Baltimore Ravens. But first, let's dive into the Maxx Crosby deal. This is just a crazy scenario. So they trade 2 first-round picks for a guy that they know is injured, that they know is early in the recovery process to where he's not going to pass his physical, most likely, because he's still very early in the process. With that being said, what they are claiming is they knew that his knee looked good for the short term, but long term didn't look good, and that's why they're kind of rescinding it. The people on the other side are like, but maybe you heard Trey Hendrickson's number was going down and you rescinded it because of that, which, again, like I said, we'll get into that a little later. But that now puts the Buccaneers and other teams back in play for Maxx Crosby. The thing is with Max and this new trade is when a team rescinds it, and whether they're telling the truth or not, when they rescind it and say it's because of the medical, that now brings his price down. Whether the Raiders like it or not, that now makes it where teams aren't going to be willing to give in those 2 first-round picks that they originally got from the Baltimore Ravens, because the argument back is going to be, but his medicals aren't very good. And so this even makes it even more of a reason why Tampa needs to go in for Maxx Crosby.
So I think the first thing to point out here is just on the Baltimore side and the repercussions of it is, we talked Monday night about the interest level in Trey Hendrickson, and clearly the Bucs were one of the 4 or 5 teams mentioned in on him. But as we heard, they were just interested in a short-term deal that tracks with what the Bucs have dealt with free agency wise. And when you have this trade be pulled out of by Baltimore, there's obviously some league GMs that are very upset about it. The Raiders are not thrilled. I'm sure Maxx Crosby's not overly thrilled. Now, Baltimore probably looked at it and said, once Trey Hendrickson's number got down, as you mentioned, Jaron, look, they signed Hendrickson for less than what they were going to be paying Maxx Crosby. Crosby's deal was, I think, 3 years, 106 or 7 million, something like that. And so you're talking about an average of around, 35 million or so per year. I mean, like you're ultimately paying 7 or so more million for Crosby just because he's a couple years younger, I suppose. I mean, we went over the production part of it. Hendrickson's been very productive. Maybe Crosby's a little bit better in run stop than Hendrickson is, making him therefore a little bit more complete. But again, we're still talking about edge rushers and that ability to rush the passer. That's still the most important part of it, obviously. So I think when it pertains to Tampa with Crosby, I mean, now you're not, I can't see anyone giving up 2 first-round picks anymore now that the Ravens pulled out. I mean, I think you're still going to have to give up 1 and then some other decent draft picks, maybe a second or a couple 3s or something like that. But, I think that the frustrating part is, and maybe why, not to put words in your mouth, but why you let off the way you did, Jaron, with the off season so far, is Bucs haven't had a splash. They've had some decent signings. They've had a couple of understandable moves. They've had the heartbreak of losing Mike Evans, but they've not done anything that says, oh, I promise the Bucs have gotten better this offseason. I promise that they are now on track to win the division again, just based off what they've done in free agency. Because Carolina's made some moves. They have made a couple big moves. And these other teams, that Atlanta and New Orleans that we don't feel have done as well this offseason. Well, I mean, again, it's not like the Bucs were significantly in a better place standings wise. I mean, it ended up being a 3-way tie. So even though I think the Falcons have done some dumb things personally, it's not as if the Bucs are running laps around them for what they've done either. So I think the need for Crosby still is. I mean, are you thinking that the person you draft in the first round is going to be so good, so robust that he's going to be so valuable long term that it's going to overwrite the very likely production that Maxx Crosby will give you in the first couple of years? And there's just nothing that tells us from Jason Licht's history, from what they've done so far in this offseason, there's nothing to say that they are actually going to be willing to give up sizable draft capital for any player.
Well said, Ryan. And for me, the Bucs, when you think about Jason Licht, like, he's a draft guy. He's not a trade guy. He's not a free agency guy. He's a draft guy, and I think he's sticking to that. And I think he thinks he can get an edge rusher for first round money, unless the guy that they really want, they have to trade down with whoever to move into the top 5 to really get the best edge rusher in this draft. And so obviously when you trade during the draft, you trade a player, you trade picks, you trade whatever. You got, financial compensation. I just think that Tampa Bay, obviously they signed Jake Browning. I thought that was a good, move. And we'll talk about that in the next segment. But they're trying to save money. And I think they're saving money for something that we just don't know about yet. So while the natives are getting restless, everybody wanted that big edge rusher. They wanted Trey Henderson. They want Maxx Crosby. I mean, if you want Max, you got to understand, the Raiders are pretty bad. I played for the Raiders. Love the Raiders. I love Mark and all the things that those people are doing. They still take care of us, too, as former players. But they're just not doing well. But they do have money. They have players. They have some draft picks. So I could see Tampa Bay making a draft day move to end up with like 2 edge rushers. And Jason is trying to save money. Maxx Crosby and Trey Henderson, to be honest, like my honest opinion, they're damaged goods. They were good when they were good, but do you really want to mortgage your team for $100 million to a player that might not be what he used to be? He might not give you what he gave someone else to make his name. Let's face it. Listen, I'm a commentator for another network, and I covered Max in college, and I thought he was good. I thought he was skinny, athletic, rangy. He got to the NFL. He's done his business. Is he, one of the top 5 DNs in the league? Yeah. Do you want to pay him like that? Well, his knee is not right. His medicals aren't legit. Trey Henderson missed 7 games or 10 games last year with a hip injury. He might not be the same dude. But with Jesse Minter going to the Ravens, and, when you hire a new head coach, you want to give him all the toys that he wants. You give him a budget and you say, hey, go get what you want. He's a defensive head coach. No surprise that Trey ended up with the Ravens. I even know Lou Esposito is a former Michigan defensive line coach. I'm sure he's going to love coaching Trey Hendrickson if he's a guy. But for Tampa Bay, it looks like Jason is trying to leverage the draft, save money, so that in the event he needs to make a blockbuster deal, they have some groceries on offense they can ship out that people will like. But I think they're saving up for something special on draft day that can make sense. You could end up with Maxx Crosby on draft day. You don't have to do it now. But the natives, you, me, Jaron, James, we think free agency for the Bucs have been boring, but at the same time, they're trying to save money and they're trying to save up for a blockbuster deal that's going to make the most sense for them to get exactly who they want for the dollar amount that they want. That's what this comes down to, dollars and cents. If we don't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Can we get our guy for the right price and get the most bang for our buck? And I think that's where Tampa Bay is now.
Another thing to consider is the Raiders, I almost said Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, they made a ton of moves this free agency because they didn't think Maxx Crosby was on the roster anymore. And so I was reading the other day that there's a couple contracts that they agreed to in the legal tampering period that they can't sign as long as Maxx Crosby is on the roster still. And, and I don't know who all those will be. Nakobe Dean, we know, signed with them, but I bet they make room to make Nakobe Dean part of their team. But there are several players that they signed that they don't have the salary cap for with Maxx Crosby's contract. That also brings Maxx Crosby's price down when you trade for him because teams now know you're desperate to get rid of him because you have to get rid of him or you can't sign some of the guys you want to sign. And so that brings it down. We mentioned the medicals that, I don't know, obviously, where we haven't seen his actual medicals. We don't know what the Ravens actually saw. Again, we'll dive into the Trey Hendrickson side of it. Did they legit see something that worried them, or was it more of the Trey Hendrickson side of it? I don't know that answer because there's a lot of contradictory stuff being said from both sides on stuff like that. So with that being said, I think a first-round pick and maybe even a third-round pick now get the Maxx Crosby deal done, whereas before it was 2 firsts that you had to do to get him. Is that something that now interests Tampa more than giving up the 2 firsts? I think it should. Again, does it? I don't know that answer. And to your point, Marcus, maybe they said, hey, we are a little worried about these medicals, but we're high on 2 guys in the first and second round at edge. We're just going to go that route because we know those guys are healthy. And they're younger. I mean, and Max isn't old. He's 28, but they're 5 years younger. And they're cheaper. And so we'll just go that route. I don't know that answer. But all I do know is Maxx Crosby's price has gone down quite a bit. And for Tampa as a team and Jason Light as a GM, as we've mentioned, as a guy that doesn't like to gamble and throw a lot of things at a player in a trade, is it now at a price that he is willing to at least consider it more?
Well, and look, I think the reality too, though, is look at why, Mike Evans left Tampa. He felt that, okay, fine, there's a new challenge, but part of it is that he doesn't feel the Bucs can realistically win the Super Bowl. If you're acquiring Maxx Crosby with a bit of an injury concern, at least for long term, and you're going to be paying him more than $30 million a year for multiple years, and we're hearing that the Bucs again were only willing to give Trey Hendrickson a short-term deal. Clearly, the Bucs view this as a short-term window in which I don't even know if they themselves think they can actually get in Super Bowl contention. I mean, if they did, I think they would have been more serious about one of these moves. They clearly see a window that is pretty small, and they're not wrong to think that with the way they finished the year. It's just disheartening because when they had the first half of the year that they had last year, you were starting to think on the other end of the equation that the window is still there and that there is something that can be done. But if you're not going to be going all in on a player like Crosby or Hendrickson, when that's your true need, it's not debatable if there's another thing that's almost as important or almost as big of a deal. When that truly is your biggest need and you're not willing to go all in on it, you want to draft. Well, drafting is more about multiple years from now. The guy you draft will theoretically be better in 2, 3, 4 years, not next year. So the things that they're doing, I mean, I get it. The A'Shawn Robinson we'll talk about in a minute, and Alex Anzalone. I mean, these are older players too, but it just kind of seems like you got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and you're trying to do your due diligence to give yourself a chance this year, but you're also not willing to actually commit and be risky about, foregoing opportunities to improve a couple of years down the line.
Well, and the other thing too, like, there's job security. Like there's some jobs on the line this season for a lot of people in Tampa Bay. I don't know if they're hanging Tabos out to dry. I don't know. I don't know if Jason Light, if he doesn't get it right in the draft or free agency, they both go together. I mean, he's been there a while and he's done a fine job. And without Tom Brady, I don't know if he have a Super Bowl during the COVID year. So my thing is, the Bucs have to make a decision. Somebody said it earlier. Is it rebuild or is it reload or is it like just tank the whole thing, scrap it and just start over? because they have to get this right. They've underachieved in the last couple of years, and last season was an abomination in the second half of the season. So, Jason, I think the Glazers are just sitting back saying, we own the team. We reserve the right to fire who we want when we feel like it. And if these guys don't get it right, we'll just reload for 27. And I think that's where you're going to see an edge rusher in the first round. You know, obviously you didn't see it during free agency, but you'll see it in the first round, and they'll play for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next. The Bucs did make a couple moves, nothing too crazy, but we'll talk about that next. Well, welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. Honestly, I'm a classic, but I haven't tried the new ones. Fruity Rainbow, Confetti Craze, Cotton Candy. I like cherry. I like grape. I like berry. But if I had to pick one, I'm going with strawberry banana. It's a tropical delight with strawberry taste that goes in everything from smoothies and milkshakes to cakes and ice cream. Sweet strawberry flavor up front. Soft, mellow banana finish. Smooth, creamy fruit profile reminiscent of a fruit smoothie. Very low acidity and easy to drink. Gentle, sweet aftertaste. That's why it's my favorite. Also, 5-Hour Energy shots give you a boost with 0 sugar. That's right, 0 sugar. So find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots, available only at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back with another episode of the Bucs Squad Show. Reminder, this is just extra content that we do twice a week, Mondays and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does great work, so make sure you follow him throughout the week. But the Bucs did make a couple moves. One of those was they did get a backup quarterback, a solid one at that, and Jake Browning from the Cincinnati Bengals. Then they add in Ashawn Robinson at defensive tackle. And then from the Carolina Panthers, and then they put a tender on Sean Tucker. And so it's a low tender basically at $3.5 million. Basically what that does is it makes it where they can match any offer sheet from other teams. If they decline to match, then there's no compensation. But Tucker will be an unrestricted free agent in 2027 now, but signs as of now would mean he would be coming back. And so we talked about that kind of, I think it was Monday when we talked about the Kenneth Gainwell addition. Having a guy like him as your third guy would be really solid if he chose to come back. We've talked about backup quarterback a few times. It's always good to have a backup quarterback because you don't need one until you need one kind of thing. And then when you need one, you really need one. And Jake Browning is, again, a really solid option at the backup quarterback. Ashawn Robinson, again, just another depth piece on the interior of the defensive line. But this is why I was just like, it's just a meh kind of free agency. And y'all both talked about it last segment. It's not that it's a bad one. We talked on Monday. There were several. Anzalone I liked. Gainwell I liked. Like, there were several things that have happened that I've liked. It's just been, it's okay. It's solid. Haven't shored up a ton of spots, but overall, it's been a solid haul, I guess you could say.
Again, it feels like it's a team that feels that it did make the playoffs and that it's a couple solid moves away from taking up to the next level. I mean, again, they're kind of acting as if they only needed a couple tweaks, and that's just not how it played out in the second half of the season. I mean, a couple tweaks might win them a division. I mean, that's fair, but winning the division at 9-8 or 10-7 rather than 8-9, again, is not going to be quite where you're after several years of winning that division and coming up short in the postseason post the Tom Brady Super Bowl, of course. So, I think with the backup quarterback first, Jake Browning, my philosophy on backup quarterback is that unless you've got a young guy that you're trying to develop, then you're pretty much in the standpoint of if you have to get to the backup quarterback, you're probably in huge trouble anyway. So, I mean, it's good to have good backups when you don't love your starter or your starter's incredibly injury prone. But I hope Jake Browning takes like 5 snaps next year, and I hope they're kneel downs at the end of blowouts so the Bucs win. Otherwise, I don't want to see Jake Browning. I hope he never plays. I think that with the Sean Tucker tender, I think that makes sense. You're not wanting to pay more than $3 or $4 million for your number 3 running back. That would not make any sense. You're already paying $7 million for your backup and Kenneth Gainwell. So, someone could give him a little bit more in free agency, and the Bucs might match that, but you're not going to go over the top more than $3 or $4 million for your RB number 3. That's just that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And then finally, the A'Shawn Robinson part of it. You see defensive linemen, you see $10 million a year. You're kind of brought back. I know they're completely different positions, but you're brought back a little bit to the Hassan Reddick deal. Now, again, A'Shawn's going to play inside as he always has, and I think this is more of a Logan Hall replacement. You're talking about having, again, Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and A'Shawn Robinson. I mean, that's a really darn good interior. Problem is that wasn't your problem. Your problem was over on the edge, and so I don't think it's a bad move, but I just don't think it's as helpful as what they're going to need. So again, they continue to tweak other things and slightly improve other things. Again, I do think A'Shawn's still got more to give than Logan Hall so far in Logan Hall's career. I mean, we talked about Anzalone being a clear upgrade over Shavassi Dennis. I like Kenneth Gainwell. I think that makes sense. I think they're doing reasonable things. I just think the appetite, whether fair or unfair, is that, hey, could you do something to significantly swing things? And obviously the answer to this point has been no, and I'm quite frankly not really expecting it anymore. And so, I mean, again, I'm trying to say that yes, they've done some modest things, but I think that ultimately, whether it wins the division or not, maybe, but it's just not going to ultimately be enough to say, oh, the Bucs are going to go in next year and win 12 or 13 and be one of the 3 best teams in the NFC. These type of moves are just not going to swing it that way for them.
Yeah, and for Sean Tucker, let me say this: 24-year-old guy, I think, undrafted free agent. Do you know how hard it is to stick in the NFL as an undrafted free agent, even after you've played? Like, I was the number 1 safety in the country coming out, and then I got suspended my senior year, and I ended up falling terribly in the draft, and I went undrafted. And I played for the Raiders, made the team as an undrafted free agent. That is like the hardest thing to do in the world, because the way it works, when you get drafted, it's like getting married. It's like you have letters behind your name. It'll say Ryan Lavoie, 3rd round pick, 96. And then people, every time somebody signs you, it says that. Every time you get signed as an undrafted free agent, it says UFA. So for him to get in his as a backup running back, as a number 3, to make $3.5 million on a 1-year deal, that's huge for a free agent. So I'm tipping my cap to that young man. And he actually filled in. He had 7 touchdowns last year. Like, he actually stepped in and filled a void and was underappreciated, which is our most undrafted free agents. Unless you're going to be Jalen Brunson in the NBA and you're going to be that good and turning to be a high-priced dude at 6 foot, I mean, it comes a dime a dozen. So for me, the Sean Tucker thing made sense on both sides. You get a guy that you gave an opportunity, a chance to make the team. He's made the team and he's stuck. He's going into year 4 or whatever it is. So give him his little bit of money, and I guess $3.5 million is a little bit of money. But then after this year, next year he'll be unrestricted, and then he can sign whatever deal he wants with whatever team. Because if Gainwell and Bucky go down, Sean Tucker is your guy. So he'll play special teams. He returns kicks. He does a lot of things. As far as A'Shawn, I mean, he's a big dude, right? So he plays on the interior. Logan Hall goes to University of Houston, where he went. They go back to the Texans, so it's a big deal. He kind of said he wanted to play for a contender, and the Texans haven't even been past the divisional. So he really was taking a shot at the Bucs, saying he's on a better team in a better situation from his standpoint. But he didn't do much as a second rounder anyways, so no love lost there. But to beef up your interior is not bad. Like I said earlier, I really think they're going to find a way to get 2 edge rushers, because one of them will pan out and the other one won't. Or one will be good and the other one he has trade value. Like, being a general manager in the NFL is like playing chess. So you have to understand, like, John Spytek was a walk-on guy at Michigan in '99. When I went to the Raiders, he was coming in. So, but Spytek's a smart dude. Obviously, he has a relationship with Jason Licht. He learned a lot about the game and how this works. So that's why there's all this Raiders and Bucs talk, because they're friends. They're business partners, they're co-workers, they're colleagues. They're going to figure out what makes sense on both sides, right? So those conversations you just couldn't imagine. I think Robinson can help the Bucs. You know, you got Kancey or whoever in the middle. You got Vita. You've got, you know, some pieces that you're trying to fill for cheap or for the least amount of possible. But Robinson's not a young dude, man. I remember watching him, you know, back in the day when he was at Alabama. I mean, he's been around for a long time. He only has 15 sacks in his career of 10 years. So he's not like a dude that's going to wreak havoc from the interior. I mean, that's 1.5 sacks per year as an interior lineman. So unless you're Warren Sapp, Aaron Donald, or your super special, interior guys don't get sacks. They're run stoppers. I mean, Vita did good, you know, when he's in shape and he plays and he's healthy, he actually makes some plays. But it's like those guys, those 1 techniques and those 3 techniques are designed to free up linebackers, get edge rushers one-on-one so that they can make a sack. That's where the money is. It's like playing offensive line. It's like being a guard. You know what I mean? It's like being a fullback. Like, those are positions that are dinosaurs, but are still, you know, they still have value. But at the same time, talk about Jake Browning. You know, Jake Browning, I watched him at Washington. I thought he was a little overhyped. He got in there as a freshman and he did some things. Had a really good college career. But if you go back and watch, the first 4 years, the man didn't play. 2 years in Minnesota, two in Cincy. And then finally in 2023, gets a chance to play. He goes 4-3, but he completed 70% of his passes, 2,000 yards. I don't really care for the 7 interceptions in 7 games. And then like even last year, I mean, Joe Burrow has been injury prone since they left the Super Bowl. So his value is completely just going all the way down. But this man's only played 17 games in his career. And I'm with you, Ryan. I don't care to see Jake Browning in there, you know, unless it's mop-up time. I mean, but at the same time, when he did get a chance to play in Cincinnati in 23, he didn't do overly bad. Then in 24, you know, Burrow was healthy. You know, the man didn't throw a pass. And then last year with Cincinnati, he was 0-3 as a starter. And he threw like 8 interceptions. So I think he's turnover prone. I'm not sure if he's even that good to begin with. But we do know Tampa Bay needed a backup quarterback. And I can see Tampa still drafting a quarterback and then cutting Bazelak or cutting Jake as well. Like, these contracts really, if it doesn't say guaranteed, it's a job application. That's what it is. You get paid for the hours you work. So don't get too caught up in who they sign and what it is and what it ain't. Sean Tucker could get cut if they draft a 5th-round running back that's legit. I mean, that's just the way the business works. So where I am with the Bucs and free agency is they haven't made any splash moves. They never really do. I mean, even going all the way back to maybe Simeon Rice might have been the best free agent move that they made back in the day, besides Tom Brady and Antonio Brown. Okay. So I've been following this team for about 25 years. So I understand some of the thought process and what's going on. And, you know, even when Dungy got fired and Gruden comes in and wins the Super Bowl, that was Dungy's team. You got to understand that. And, you know, they traded for Gruden. So you just never know what the Glazers are up to. You know, they're a wealthy family. They've made some moves that have made sense. They've hired African-American coaches. They've done some unconventional things. Okay. But at the same time, where the Bucs are now, if they want to win again, they better figure this out. And they didn't do it in free agency. So I think they got some tricks up their sleeve during the draft. But I think Jake Browning was a real sneaky, safe signing for free agency. And then you draft a quarterback and you figure it out.
Well, and the only issue with not going out there and getting some big fish in free agency, again, it's not a bad free agent class, is now you're putting a lot of pressure on your drafting ability, and not just that, your evaluations, which we've seen. Now, Mecca was obviously a pretty good one, but Light hasn't done great early in drafts. He's done really good in the middle part of drafts. And so, but this is putting a lot of pressure on you to draft really well early in the draft, because you need to have some big time players come out of that. it's also putting a lot of pressure. Like, this is the kind of offseason so far that I would have expect Tampa to have if they didn't have the collapse at the end of the year. Like, you're just making some really solid moves to improve the team, go in it with the draft, don't give away a ton of draft capital or money, go into the draft, let's find some really good pieces and let's roll. But with the collapse and all of us believing this could be Todd Bowles' last season if things don't go well, you just thought there'd be more urgency. And I guess that's why it's more of a meh feeling, because there wasn't, or doesn't seem to be, any urgency to go and prove a lot of different positions. But I know we're out of time with this segment. Coming up next, we got to talk about Lavonte David. Is he staying? Is he retiring? We'll talk about that next. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board, and now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits my read. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for another segment of the Bucs Squad show. So the wait continues on the Lavonte David news. I thought maybe we would get an answer today. I was hoping, especially for this podcast, that we'd have an answer today. Then we could have some stuff to talk about. It's clear he's either going to stay at Tampa or he's retiring. It's not like a Mike Evans situation where he's mulling multiple offers. At least that's not what it sounds like. It sounds like it's Tampa retirement kind of thing. There's been reports out there that a decision will happen soon. There's been reports out there that he was kind of upset, not like mad upset, but in more of a sad way that Mike is now gone, and that's now affecting his decision, and that's why it's taking a little longer than before. Ultimately, I still feel that Lavonte David is coming back. But as of now, I mean, the longer this plays out, I feel like the less likely he is coming back. And that's why you would hope to get an answer from him sooner than later, because especially if he doesn't come back, then you want to use some of that money, or at least you have another position to fill regardless. And so you'd like to get in on someone before all the really talented players get taken up. But I still feel like he's going to come back. But again, the longer he waits, it makes me less and less likely.
We've accrued a lot of different changes over the last year or so in our thinking of Lavonte David playing in 2026. And, you know, I try to see if things are actually important or they're just kind of nothing. For example, you know, he gets the knee cleaned up, has the knee procedure. Well, in general, you'd be like, oh, he did that kind of quickly. Then maybe that indicates he's going to train this off season and work to play another year. But also it's like, maybe the dude doesn't want to walk around with knee pain as much as he has to, you know. I mean, like that's also a possibility. And I mean, here's the thing with Lavonte. I mean, he would get the tackles record by himself if he comes back. And beside that, you know, does he believe it would be worth it to grind for another division, knowing that the Super Bowl possibility is very far-fetched at this point? You know, are you good to be grinding on a 9-8 type of team with hopefully upside to be double-digit wins and trying to squeak out the division again? What do you regret if you came back and played poorly and the team as a whole played poorly? I mean, you're going through a lot of different things there. I will say this: I don't think the Bucs strategy should change much, actually, no matter what Lavonte David does, because I'm drafting a linebacker around the second round, period, at this point, because you know you're living on borrowed time. You know that you just signed Alex Anzalone to be one of your starting linebackers. I know that we never got a look at David Walker last year. Would love to see that, but I don't think it matters. I think they're drafting someone second, third round at the latest. I mean, as of right now, I think the draft is clear that it's an edge rusher in the first round. If you want to double up, fine. If not, go to linebacker, think about corner. I mean, those are your first 3 rounds, I think, clearly. So, you know, I will say that in general, yes, I do want Lavonte back. It would still be meaningful to see him out there. But at the same time, again, I don't blame him. And also, I don't know about you guys. I know that the organization would love an answer sooner rather than later. I know that's also why someone like Travis Kelce went ahead and said he's coming back to KC, although I could have made an argument that he was going to retire after last year. I guess what I'm saying is I'm still, though, even with those factors, a little surprised that it feels like it's got to be this week. It's got to be right now because they already did sign another linebacker, and I don't think their draft strategy changes a whole lot. And I don't think if Lavonte retires, it's still their number 2 need because they still haven't filled edge rusher. So I think that ultimately, while it's a big deal just from the standpoint that he's another franchise legend and you already lost one, do you want to lose them both in one off season? I don't think structurally it changes the team that much.
That's a good point. See, the Lavonte David thing is like this. Like, at his age and his career, he's checked a lot of boxes. I think he wants to have a better season or go out on a team that made a run. If you're getting knee surgery and you're contemplating and there's a tackle record on the line, you're probably coming back. That's what I think. I think that tackle record is important. Like, individual awards get kind of swallowed and suffocated in college football. Like, your college coach tells you, hey, there's no I in team, but there damn sure is a me. It's an ME in team. And you have to realize, like, NFL guys are selfish. Mike Evans didn't like that his streak got broke because he wanted to, like, be the sole guy. He didn't want to tie Jerry. He wanted to break it. And so he got injured, and the team flopped. And then they gave up 3rd and 28. And then it's like, so Mike Evans was leaving. His time was up in Tampa. Lavonte David is a different story because I don't think he felt the same kind of way, but I don't think he feels like if he goes to another team that he can help them win a Super Bowl. I think he feels like where his value is, where he's appreciated, where he's the leader, where it's his team, it's his defense, it's Tampa Bay. And so you get knee surgery so you can make one more round, so you can break the tackle record. That's important to Lavonte. I don't care what nobody's typing and nobody says. Being the all-time leading tackler in that franchise is a big deal. And if you go into the Hall of Fame now, it doesn't water down what Derek Brooks did. People don't realize Derek Brooks was the number 1 safety coming out of high school. He was a safety, okay? And then they moved him to linebacker. Javon Curse was a safety in high school. Played linebacker in Florida, played edge rusher in the NFL. So to be in a class of your own, it matters. And I think that's what turned Mike off a little bit was he just really doesn't think. He knows that receiver room is loaded. You got a new coordinator. The ball's going to get spread around. You got some young, hungry receivers that come August, everybody should be healthy. By September, you'll have a full roster. Mike didn't like the fact that when everybody was healthy that they didn't make a run, and they had already had a head start in the first 8 games. Lavonte's thinking the same way, but he wants to do it in a Tampa uniform. And obviously, that linebacker class that, Lavonte came out with, you got Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly, you got all types of guys. He wants to go down as one of the best in that class. Bobby Wagner will go into the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Luke Kuechly's there. So you have to understand, like, Lavonte is going to play one more for the Gipper. And if it's not about the money. It's about he believes in Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles has helped him tremendously. They've helped each other. Lavonte may have saved Todd Bowles' job for all we know. So you have to understand, when he was young and they had Devin White and those guys, like, Devin White was pretty good to me. Like, he was picking off passes, and I used to call Larry and be like, who is number 45? He's a beast. So Lavonte wants to separate himself from the pack, and that's what Mike wants to do. Mike wants to be one of the first guys to have 1,000 yards, multiple 1,000 yards receiving at 2 different teams. Why do you think Tom Brady came to the Bucs and wanted to win a Super Bowl? Why do you think, guys like Antonio Brown, like, when you leave where we know you from and you go somewhere else, it's because you're trying to leave a legacy that's different. You want something behind your name to say, like Kurt Warner, you know what I mean? Like the guy that, it's a couple Super Bowls, a couple different teams. It's like, you want to be that guy. So for Lavonte, he's getting his knee cleaned up. He's going to work out. He doesn't need the money. He loves Tampa. You give one more. They'll draft a linebacker, as you said, Ryan. He'll come out, be a leader. He'll play next to Double A, Big Alex from Detroit. He'll come in there. They'll wreck shop together. You get the little rookie together, and then they'll go to the NFC, divisional. Probably win a wild card game. But their division is not that tough. The only problem is, and I'll sum this up, is there's teams in that division that weren't very good that are making some strides. You got to keep an eye on them Saints. Nobody wanted to play the Saints in December. Nobody. They were like that Shuck and everybody else. When they figured it out, it was too late. Carolina obviously made a push. Atlanta made a run. Raheem got fired. But 8-9, a three-way tie, and in a division that was like, and the worst team in the division was the hottest team. This is make or break for Tampa. So Lavonte David is going to be there one more year, if not to even solidify his legacy, but also to try to help Todd Bowles save his job, to make Jason Light look like he knows what he's doing. Like, this is a big deal for everybody, but I think he wants to be healthy. I think he wants some help, and he's going to want some more help at corner, and they're going to have to do it from the draft.
And the Panthers have done really well in free agency so far. I would say of the NFC South teams, they probably have one free agency. They've done a really good job after making the playoff. Just playing devil's advocate, and I'm not saying this is what I think is going through Lavonte's head. But I would like to ask you, Marcus, because I hear a lot of former players talk about this, especially ones that might retire after 10 years or so, and they just said, man, during the season, I'm so beat up, I'm so sore after playing so many games. And then I had an off season, and I finally started feeling fresh and normal. And that's why I decided, you know what, I don't want to go through that again, and then possibly get a major injury in my last year, and then I'm out for a while, or I'm dealing with something at home now. So since my body felt good, I thought it was a good time to retire. What if that is what, and Ryan brought that up, and several comments have brought that up. What if that is what Lavonte is thinking? Like, hey, I've been battling this knee injury all year. It's been a lot of pain. It's been hard to play with my kids or whatever the case may be. But now I had this knee surgery, and I'm feeling really good. Do I want to go risk it again? Is that even something that players think about?
No. We're football players are half crazy. Like we have half a brain, and like I have half a brain now, which is why sometimes I may talk in circles or just make certain comments. It's not CTE. It's just we have a half a brain. And you have to be half crazy to even play this game. And you never want to take the helmet off because your life will change immediately. Like Brett Favre, Tom Brady. Once they took the helmet off, they weren't the same guy. I mean, yeah, they're doing other things, but we know you for playing the game. And I think for Lavonte, a knee is not going to send him out of the league. It's just not, because we're not wired up to go out on injury. Unless it's real serious, like a neck or something.
Or
but if
head or something.
Yeah, it's like head or neck. But if we can wake up that morning and run or tackle or catch, we want to play. Like right now, honestly, if I wasn't like out of shape and older, I would go bust somebody's neck right now if I could. I would just splice right through the collarbone of one of these wide receivers and teach one of these young boys a lesson. I will. Just put the tape on. That's what I should do. So Lavonte thinks the same way. He's a linebacker. He's a tough guy. He's a machine. He's a gladiator. He's a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys don't put the shield and the sword down that easy. You got a Super Bowl. You're going to the Hall of Fame. Do you want to go out like Ray Lewis or not? Do you? That's what Lavonte wakes up in the morning. He does like this. He looks at him, he brushes his teeth, he kisses his children, he tells his wife, hey, baby, don't worry about it. Yeah, we'll go on that, book the timeshare for the DR. And understand this, I want to bust somebody's head wide open. That's how football players wake up every day. So don't think this man is done just because of a knee where he got arthroscopic, where they just go in and clean it up, clean up a little ligament here or two or there. That man wants to show these young boys that he's still the best. He wants to win. And that's why I think he's going to play. But football players wake up every day wanting to hurt somebody. And that's what he wants to do because he got banged up. His team went 8-9. Mike's gone. He wants to know, give me one more year. I'll give y'all everything I got. Give me everything you got, and then we can live with it. That's where Lavonte's head is.
So basically what you're saying, the people that think that way, that's Ohio State players, the former Ohio State players.
Yeah, the butt guys. Not the butt guys, the butt guys.
I will say most of the players that I've heard talk about stuff like that are offensive, probably running backs. You hear probably more than anything, but they do take a beating probably more than other positions offensively. Ryan, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add too. I mean, and that makes sense too because there are guys that do retire young, and we see this sometimes in the offensive line. Actually, division rival is a great example. Luke Kuechly retired really young.
Always thought with the Bears center, retired.
Sure, Drew
yeah.
Dahlman, yeah, or yep. So, I mean, there's a few. Maybe they're the few that have both sides of the brain, Marcus. I don't know. But yeah, but I think too that for Lavonte to already been playing this long to begin with, again, that certainly would be such a big deal for him to have that record by himself. And again, the first part of the show, I feel like we're saying more negative things on the Bucs. The positive is that the division is still the division, and Marcus kind of alluded to that too. And I think that while these teams maybe played better than Tampa did down the stretch, New Orleans has still been in a lot of cap hell, and Shuck may or may not actually be a starting quarterback in the league. He might have had a hot month. We don't know. I do think Carolina has made a serious improvement or two, and I think that is going to be difficult. Atlanta, I don't like their free agency, and so and you talk about a guy playing through injuries. I mean, Tua felt like he needed to retire with all the concussions, and yet he is still out there. So, I think that's still an incredibly winnable division. It's just that I think we were thinking of it in terms of can they make another stride towards the Super Bowl. But Lavonte is thinking maybe get a tackle here, get a tackle there, and just win another division. And as you said, Marcus, also play for a guy that I think he's really liked in Todd Bowles.
And if he would have got the tackle record last year, maybe he does retire this offseason. I think that will motivate him to possibly come back. All right, coming up next, we're going to go around the NFL and answer any questions if you guys have any. We'll do that next. Don't go anywhere. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for our final segment of the Bucs Squad Show. Reminder, this is just extra content we do twice a week on Monday and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So it doesn't take anything away from what James does. So make sure to follow him. So in this segment, I kind of want to talk about the Trey Hendrickson side because it is such a weird case. So Trey Hendrickson obviously signs the 4-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens. It was reported that he was about to sign with the Colts before Baltimore called and then said, hey, we actually might be rescinding the Maxx Crosby deal. Tampa was involved, but was offering shorter years, which I actually agree with that move. I know a lot of people are mad at Jason Light, but I said that when we've talked about Trey Hendrickson every time. But this is where it doesn't add up because that's what the report was by Ian Rappaport. He said, hey, he was about to sign with the Colts, but then the Crosby thing fell through, and that's when he came here. Hendrickson says that he was of the mindset that he was signing and Crosby was going to be on the roster, which doesn't really make sense either because money-wise it wouldn't have made sense unless he's taking a very cheap deal. And then it was reported that on top of that, there's been not reported, but some rumors that maybe that Ravens kind of felt, hey, his number's actually lower than we thought it was going to be. Let's send Crosby back. We get our first picks back. And we still sign a very talented player, which I think is the likely scenario that happened in this thing, especially because Baltimore's not a team historically that trades those picks, but they did for Crosby. So I felt like, okay, maybe that's what they were doing. But it feels like every single time if we figured it out, something else turns because, like I said, Hendrickson said he thought he was going to be playing with Crosby. But there was a report earlier today that said Hendrickson wasn't even called until the deal was rescinded for Crosby. I don't know what's happening with this thing. It's one of the most wild stories I've heard in free agency.
And I think that last thing that you talked about, Jaron, with the just, hey, it's better value to sign him for a cheaper price and not give it the draft picks. I think that's what NFL GMs think from what we were seeing over the last 24 hours. And that's kind of where I lean too. Like, I mean, look, they had to have some knowledge of the Maxx Crosby situation, right? They're not dumb. So that medical report is one of two things. Either that knee is shredded and he'll be lucky to play a full season ever again, or they just saw the Hendrickson price come down and they said, oh, yeah, well, it looks looks kind of bad to us for the medical report when it's really what everyone would have been expecting. So either the medical report was far worse or they just used it as the excuse. And I tend to think the latter, because when you think about it too, and why I had kind of gravitated more on Hendrickson than Crosby, despite being a few years older and also not playing a full season last year. Crosby actually played far more games than Hendrickson last season, just that he left the season with a significant injury. It's that I think that when you're paying already 30, like I said, 36 million a year, something like that for Crosby, you're getting Hendrickson at 28. So you're saving 8 million there, and you're saving not one but two chances to draft someone of high significance in the draft through first round picks. Is Crosby that much better? It's maybe if we're just talking 8 million, but I don't know if you can parlay that into two opportunities to also get Pro Bowl caliber players. And so when you think of it that way, is I think the value part of it, I know I'm probably making Jason Light proud right now. The value part of it is that I would rather, save those draft picks. Now, again, we know that the Light part of it is that he was not willing to pony up for multiple years. So again, I think that's still where we differ, because I think that you still needed a high impact player like that, period, even if it was one more or two more years than you were comfortable with doing. But I think it has been fascinating, and I do think the Raiders they've said they're going to end up honoring all their contracts because they got busy in free agency. But back to a point you made in segment one, Jaron, I do think that they're probably going to trade Crosby for half of what they had agreed to originally, because I don't think that was a very tenable situation at the end of the year. Crosby was saying that he wasn't hurt enough to where he couldn't play, and the Raiders said, no, you're hurt. You don't need to be playing. That in itself was sticky, and it already had been simmering from the previous year.
I think Maxx Crosby wants to win a Super Bowl. I mean, he's turning into like a WWE wrestler where he's a very popular, successful guy, but like he's playing on a bad team. And so what the Raiders are trying to do is leverage a banged up, damaged good Maxx Crosby for a high price to get way more, whether it's picks, whether it's trades. They want to leverage Crosby for where he is to get more so they can rebuild. And I think Max knows that. And I think the Ravens were flirting with the Maxx Crosby deal to make Trey Hendrickson come down. Both of these guys are injured, man. So you got to understand, like, Hendrickson is good. Jesse Minter, and you guys saw in our text message thread, I support Jesse. Even though his dad probably calls the defense more than he does, because his dad was a great defensive head coach and defensive coordinator down at Cincinnati and University of Cincinnati, early 90s. So when Jesse got hired at Michigan, I knew he was going to do good when he brought his father with him. Then he took his father with him to the Chargers. And so Jim Harbaugh knew what he was doing when he hired this young boy who had a dad who's a savant. And now the Ravens figured it out. So his dad is a lot more involved than y'all think. But my point is, the Ravens are trying to win and get back into it while KC is down. Buffalo can't stop a nosebleed from running. And so, they made a few moves in free agency. Buffalo, that is. I actually weren't mad. I mean, when they got Bradley Chubb, 3 years, $43.5 million, 29 guaranteed. They got Sam Franklin. He re-signed a 3-year deal. They got the quarterback Shane. They got DJ Moore. So it's like Buffalo's trying to re-up a little bit. So if you're one of those upper-tier AFC teams, like the Ravens are, when Lamar Jackson comes back healthy and you put some pieces around him and you build that defense up, and the Ravens are known for defense and Lamar Jackson, but at the same time, Trey Hendrickson going there makes a lot of sense. But I actually think they kind of put the carrot in front of the donkey, if you will, to say, we want Maxx Crosby, but do you want to win, Trey? You want to stay in the AFC North and dominate all these same average offensive tackles in the AFC North? You want to get 3 sacks against the Steelers twice a year, huh? So
you want to go up against your own offensive line from
how
last
about
year?
that? Yeah, right. Yeah, you want to go against a guy that you've been whooping in practice for the last 5 years? Yeah. So it makes sense for the Ravens to take Trey over Max at a cheaper price. And I think Max's injury was a little more severe than Trey's. So at this point, I thought the Ravens won that, and I think the Raiders are still trying to shop Roman Reigns, if you will. They're trying to shop him to get more for him than he's really worth, and they don't want to pay him that ticket.
And someone brought up a great point because I've seen this reported too. This was what he said. He was asking the question, but how much does this hurt the Ravens for future trades with other teams? I've seen this brought up because if it is true, like Ryan said, which that's what the reports have been, is that GMs think it was a way just to get out of the Max deal because Trey was there. It was not because of actually bad medicals. I think this absolutely will hurt them with future trades. Because the thing is, when you trade, you have to trust the other side, whether you trust them that they're giving you the equal value that you think you're getting, whether it's, trust that they're not going to screw you over at the end of the day, whatever the case may be, you have to trust that other side. And I think this is going to hurt them moving forward, which is crazy because the Ravens have kind of been looked at as the premier front office for a long time. And I know Ozzie Newsome isn't there anymore, and he was a big part of that. He retired, but still, I mean, I think it's going to hurt them with future trying to find future partners on trades.
I think they'll have to sweeten each deal for the short term. I think time will heal all wounds, but for the first, couple years since this, as long as Hendrickson's a Raven, maybe let's put it that way, then there might be an extra mid-round pick have to be thrown into things because you wouldn't be able to trust it, and that's what we forget too about free agency starting on Monday. It's very NBA-like where the deals aren't actually signed until 48 hours plus later. And so anything is just mutually agreed upon and it's not technically in writing. So, those things that are kind of still handshake agreements in a way, if you break those, the NFL can be, look, we know it's cutthroat. So if you're going to wrong a team and other GMs, other owners, other entities there are going to feel the same way. They'll try to blacklist you for a little while. So I think short term it'll have an effect. But also, if the Ravens have their way, they've already done their work. What more do they need to do to improve their roster? They've got their franchise QB, got pretty good receivers. They can run the hell out of the ball, and then they got their stud on defense. So from the Ravens' perspective, you shouldn't need a whole lot of more negotiating with other tems in the near future.
Yeah, the Ravens are back in business, and it was interesting to see how Tampa didn't want to sign Trey to a long-term deal. I actually think, to Trey's defense, if I was his agent, I would have took the short-term deal with the Bucs. I really would have, because you're about to be 32 years old. And that's not really old per se, depending on the position. But for a defensive end to dominate at that age at a high clip, why not get your money and be on a team to where you actually have a chance of probably winning the Super Bowl? But he wanted a long-term deal, and that was another reason that the Bucs didn't get him. The Bucs couldn't afford Trey at the number that he wanted, but the Ravens could. So I think the Ravens won out there, but I think Trey could have survived in Tampa for 2 years, $50 million or $58 million or something like that. And then the Bucs could have won a Super Bowl or possibly made a run and still drafted a couple of other guys so that when that 2-year span is over, because Trey Hendrickson won't be the same guy at 36. He just won't. So I was like Khalil Mack and like the rest of them, Jadeveon Clowney, whoever else, those guys just, their value, they're like used cars. They go down 10,000 as soon as they drive off the lot. And so those guys aren't worth the money that you spent on them the day after they sign their contract. So for me, I think the Ravens got him at the right time for the right price, and I think it's actually going to play out. But I think Tampa could have really solved some problems by signing Trey to a 2-year deal. And I know he didn't want that. His agent didn't, and agents don't. The longer the deal, the bigger the bread. Then you don't have to revisit this process 2 years from now.
I think one of two things I would have done if I was in Trey's situation. I think he did the first part of this. I think he looked at it as probably his last big payday. And so he said, I want as many years as I can get. And that's the route he took. I would have probably taken the other route, which is the short-term route that you're talking about, Marcus. But I might even have signed a 1-year prove-it deal with Tampa, because that way, because if you do a 2-year, for example, and you play really well your first year, and then you start to decline your second year, you're probably not going to get that payday again. But if you sign that 1-year prove-it deal and you return to your form, teams might then give you the long-term big deal that you were hoping to get the offseason before, and Tampa might be able to give you it at that point. And even though you might eventually decline, which you probably would decline at the end of that, I think that's probably the route I would have gone, the 1-year prove-it deal somewhere. But I understand saying, hey, I don't want to risk trying to prove it and not playing well and then not ever get paid again. But all right, that's going to do it for the Bucs Squad show. We'll be back on Monday night to talk any other free agency news that happens. But make sure you keep following James all week. He's going to have everything covered. Maybe there's a Lavonte David news before Monday. If there is, James got you covered. So until next time, fire the cannons.